located at 3915 Hiawatha. The application is submitted by Lucy Bar and Restaurant Limited Liability Company, doing business as Mesab. They are seeking an on-sale wine and strong beer license, Class E. This address is located in the Howe neighborhood in the 12th Ward. They will have interior seating for 49 persons and no exterior seating for customers at this time. They intend to be open from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. 7 days a week. This is a Minnesota corporation owned by Munier Tesfaye. He is the 100% owner. And this will be a full-service sit-down restaurant featuring authentic Ethiopian dishes, serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's not been a restaurant or alcohol license at this location previously, so we are required to hold a public hearing today. We notified all residents and property owners within 600 feet of today's public hearing. We also notified the Longfellow Community Council and the Longfellow Business Association. We received no responses for or against this application. We find they meet all of our requirements and are recommending approval.
Are there any questions for Mr. Wilson? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 10. Is Munier Tesfaye here? Come on up.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Munai. I am from Ethiopia. I'm just excited too because I had a business back in Kenya. I'm from Ethiopia, so I am so excited to show people my cultural food.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We're very excited for your restaurant.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record too.
Yeah, I just want to add something about this
Could you say,
restaurant.
Would you mind saying your name?
Ade Tarafe.
Thank you.
In this opportunity, I would like to introduce you guys. Welcome to Taste Ethiopian Restaurant. So we are really interested to work to a very good Ethiopian restaurant and American restaurant, American menu too. Muna is one of the top worker in Bayerly and food as American food. So she can apply both Ethiopian and American food. So we are interested to do that best food. So we are really excited to open this restaurant. So we apply to, in addition to the food item, we are interested to add beer and wine. So our people actually, we are not focused on beer and wine, but in addition to that, just additional items we can apply for beer and wine. So just we request to approve our beer and wine just to add in the food item. We are not focused on beer and wine, so just it's additional. So hopefully we will work everything very well. So just we ask this question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. This is a beer and wine application, correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yep, so this is for a restaurant and beer and wine.
Yes.
All at the same time right now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none? Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval.
Approval of item number 10 has been moved. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 11, Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application by the Pires Brewing Company, LLC, for a new on-sale liquor with Sunday sales, tap room, and off-sale malt liquor growler license for 1401 West River Road North. There's not been an alcohol use at this address before, and I'm believing this is our 29th small brewery that we will be approving today. This is in the near north neighborhood in Ward 5. They will have interior seating in their tap room for 155 seats and no exterior seating at this time. Pires Brewing is a Minnesota corporation formed in 2012. The principal owner is Jeremy Pires. He's also the president of that corporation, and there are other owners involved, including Alan Flynn, Michael Cornell, and Benjamin Schuster, and then some minority shareholders as well. Pires Brewing Company will have a full-service kitchen with their tap room. A public hearing is required. Notices were mailed to residents and property owners within 600 feet of this business. We also notified the Harrison Neighborhood Group. We received no responses for or against this application. We find they meet all of our requirements and recommend approval.
You notified Harrison even though it's in near north? I'm having a hard time picturing where this is. It's on the River Road, right?
Yes, Madam Chair. It's just above between the Plymouth and Broadway bridges on West River Road North.
So that has to be near north. That's not the Harrison neighborhood.
I'm not sure, but I'll ask the inspector who processed this. Dan, can you check that for me?
Afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Inspector Dan Jenkins for Business Licensing. Near North was notified on that. The location is actually on Plymouth Avenue and West River Road.
Okay.
It's, I believe,
Kind of by Standard Heating and Oil over there? Or
It's-
further north?
be further north. There's housing office in the same building, I believe.
Got it. Okay. Okay, that's not Harrison, though. I thought I heard you say Harrison, so that's why I was confused. Okay. Thank you. Further questions from Mr. Wilson? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 11. Is Mr. Pires here? Pires here? Anyone here from the brewery? This is a public hearing on item number 11. Is there anyone here for this issue? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of this item. I just want to comment briefly that
Please
it's
do.
this is a really significant improvement, I think, to the central riverfront and what is really the northern riverfront. You know, it's an area that by and large has been cut off from the rest of the community, has not seen a lot of commercial and business growth with the exception of that which has been subsidized in the past. And so I think having some amenity there right on the river that causes people to actually go there, not just run by, not just bike by, but, you know, linger a little while and have a beer, I think is a really great improvement. So I'm looking forward to it.
And Councilmember Fry's motion to approve, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. On to item number 12. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, we have an application by Seward Community Co-op Incorporated for their restaurant located at 2601 East Franklin. They are requesting a permanent expansion of premises for a private outdoor patio and an upgrade of their entertainment level for their wine and beer license from Class E to C2, and this will allow them to offer acoustic music groups in the restaurant. This is in the Seward neighborhood in Ward 6. They have exterior seating. This will be exterior private outdoor patio seating for 40 guests, and that will complement their existing interior seats, which hold 60 persons. They intend to be open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. This application requires us to hold a public hearing today. We notified all residents and property owners within 600 feet of that premise. We also notified the Seward Neighborhood Group and the Seward Civic and Commerce Association and the Franklin Area Business Association of today's public hearing. We received 2 mail responses and both were in support of the application. Staff's recommendation is that the application be approved.
Are there any questions for staff on item number 12? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on item number 12, which is a license upgrade and expansion of premise for the Seward Co-op Creamery. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Fry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of this item.
Approval of item number 12 has been moved. Further comments and questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll then move on to item number 13. Ms. Roberts, welcome.
Committee Chair Goodman, committee members, I'm Linda Roberts, Assistant Manager in Business Licensing. I'll give a brief presentation about the amendment before you today. The Commons is roughly a 4-acre park that's overseen by Minneapolis City Council and operated and maintained by Green Minneapolis. The Commons has already been the site of fun activities and vitality in the center of downtown for its residents and visitors. If the amendment before you passes, there's another opportunity for the Commons to be innovative and vital while balancing livability and safety for all whom enjoy this amenity. The amendment before you would simply allow sanctioned Green Minneapolis events to permit consuming alcohol in public. I know. Let it sink in just for a moment. Yes. So when management of Green Minneapolis says that it's okay, people that can legally drink alcohol and legally purchase alcohol can bring it to the park for, let's say, movie night and consume responsibly a glass of wine. That's what we're talking about. So I want to represent the hard work that Green Minneapolis has done that's in your packet to consider the rules to maintain this vital but livable, safe park. There are considerations that have been in place to make sure that it's run with the rules that are going to ensure that safety. Like, let's say the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. You must use a garbage and recycling bins. You must pick up after yourself and your dog, and children must be supervised. I want the record to reflect that's not in the packet that you have is that Green Minneapolis anticipates having limited sanction events like movie nights that allow for public alcohol consumption. And they do plan on hiring off-duty officers on those sanctioned events. They are also prepared to adjust the rules that are mentioned in the packet if they need to eliminate any concern for safety. And they're also prepared that if they can address any livability and safety concerns, not to provide these sanctioned events. The amendment that is before you was brought to the Downtown Minneapolis Neighborhood Association on April 5th, and that group submitted a letter of support for the amendment. Public hearing notices were mailed out to all neighborhood associations and business associations, and we've received 2 letters of support. Staff are recommending support for this amendment, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Roberts on item number 13? Seeing none? I think it's pretty simple. Thank you for your report. I'll open the public hearing on item number 13. Is there anyone here to speak to this issue? Anyone? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move approval of this item and speak to it briefly.
Please do.
So the impetus for this ordinance change came from my honeymoon, actually, this last year. And so I got married, we went to Paris, and we sat on the bank of the Seine River drinking from a bottle of wine and slicing off cheese. And we had a spectacular time. While I realized Minneapolis is not Paris, it doesn't mean we can't think outside of the box in the way we've traditionally done things. And specifically with the Commons, we are trying it out with this very narrow framework, allowing it in one park, in one green space, on select days, that allow, and having that narrow framework allows us to evaluate how this is working going forward. But, you know, I don't see any reason why we can't bring a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of wine to the park to watch a movie on a Wednesday night, enjoy ourselves, clean up after ourselves, and then move on. I think this will work. I am thankful to be working with Green Minneapolis on this particular ordinance, and I do think it'll be a great addition.
Further comments or questions on item 13? Seeing none, on Councilmember Fry's motion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. We'll then move on to the consent item with the MCDA Operating Committee. I was going to ask the clerk, there's no public hearing, or there is a public hearing? Okay. So I'll call to order the Minneapolis Community Development Operating Committee, which consists of 5 commissioners, including Commissioner Cano, Quincy, Fry, and Warsame. There's an item in front of us, which is final approval of an issuance of revenue bonds by the city to refund, by the city of Landfall Village to refund outstanding revenue bonds for resourcing. Are there any questions from commission members or committee members on the action in front of us on item number 14? Seeing no questions, I'll move approval of the staff recommendation on item number 14. Are there further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. The commission now stands adjourned. We'll then move back to our regular community development agenda, starting with item number 25, which is the License Settlement Conference recommendations with regard to Surdyk's Liquor. Mr. Wilson.
Madam Chair, this matter does involve the off-sale liquor license currently held by Surdyk's Liquor Incorporated and James Surdyk, doing business as Surdyk's Liquor at 303 East Hennepin Avenue. On Sunday, March 12, 2017, the licensee was open for business and made multiple off-sales of beverage alcohol in violation of state law and city ordinance that prohibits the Sunday sale of alcohol. Mr. Surdyk was advised in person that this was a violation, and that he was also warned by the Minnesota Alcohol and Gambling Unit of the Commerce Department to close. Despite those warnings, Mr. Surdyk chose to stay open and operate all day. On March 13th, the next day, the licensee was served with a notice of adverse license action detailing these alleged violations. On March 22nd, 2017, the licensee and its counsel met with city staff and their counsel. Subsequent to that meeting, the parties negotiated this licensing settlement agreement that's in your packet today and jointly recommend its adoption by the city council. The proposed agreement stipulates that the licensee shall pay a $6,000 civil penalty to the city of Minneapolis before May 15th, and that the off-sale licensee, at the off-sale license held by the licensee, be suspended for 10 days to include Sunday, July 2nd, and the following 8 Sundays through and including Sunday, August 27th. The 10th day of the suspension would be served on any Saturday of the licensee's choosing during the remainder of the calendar year. It is anticipated that the City Council will adopt the necessary ordinance amendment allowing the implementation of the recent state law change to allow for Sunday sales of alcohol, and that will start effective July 2nd if approved. Should the Sunday sales not be authorized by the Minneapolis City Council, this agreement would be void. This concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from Mr. Wilson on his report with regard to item number 23? Okay, there are no questions. Mr. Fussy, what would you suggest with regard to the next portion of this process?
Well, Madam Chair and committee members, I know that the licensee and their counsel are here today, and I think it would be advisable to grant them a short amount of time to address the proposed settlement.
Okay, without objection from members of the committee, we'll go ahead and do that. Is Mr. Surdyk here?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the council. My name is Dennis Johnson, and I represent Surdyk's. I got involved in this after the fact. I wasn't involved at the time that this incident occurred. I immediately met with Mr. Surdyk, and I don't think that there's any question that there was no discussion about whether this was appropriate or not. It's simply that it was a bonehead move, and we need to deal with it and accept any consequences that come from the city. We did have a discussion. I will tell you that we met, as Mr. Wilson indicates, with the city and Grant Wilson, and Mr. Surdyk apologized for his actions. There's various things that were going through his head, but none of them, when he talked to me, made any sense that he should have been open that day. He understands that, and he wants to put this behind him. In discussing this with the city, I tried to put it in terms of monetary penalty to him. We talk about days closed, and sometimes it doesn't get adjusted or quantified over. I would note that Surdyk's has been around for 80 years. Mr. Surdyk's been running it for about 40 years, and I don't think he's ever had a violation with this city. His family's part of the operation now, and his daughter Melissa is here today. What I wanted to do is try to quantify what's happening with this particular penalty. I would indicate that I provided financial information to the city attorney so that we understand exactly what the financial benefit that he had, if any, which probably won't be any at some point, for being open that Sunday. I will tell you that the $6,000, that's the initial suggested payment, wipes out any benefit he had that Sunday being open. We provided the actual sales and gross profit, and the gross profit is about a little bit more than $6,000, and that's before taxes and other expenses. So we felt that the initial penalty that's been issued against him kind of penalized him and took away that Sunday, as it should. Then we had to deal with what other penalties, so things like this don't happen again, and we understand the reason for the penalty. And so we looked at tying it to the Sundays and making sure that he doesn't get the benefit of the Sundays for several of them when they first open up. And that's how the resolution came to the 9 Sundays. Trying to put that, because we don't have a history of Sundays, but just kind of looking at what happened, we would quantify that it's probably gross profit around $10,000 to $12,000 a Sunday, which adds up pretty fast if you're closed for 9 Sundays. If you throw in a Saturday, that's probably triple on a day when he closes for a Saturday. So we think that we're trying to make the punishment fit the crime. I understand that no one's going to sit here, nor will he, and try to explain away what happened. What we're trying to do is put this behind us and move on and take our lumps and understand that we have to have some penalty for what happened. And so what we're asking is that the committee look at the resolution that we signed and agreed to and adopt that. We will abide by it. It'll be a substantial monetary penalty to my client, but he understands that that's what the purpose of this entire process is. So we'd ask you to look at it and adopt it. Mr. Surdyk is here if you'd like him to address you and apologize himself, as he'd already done to Mr. Wilson, because he has no excuse. He simply wants to move on. He's a one-store operation. There's a lot of competition out there these days with multi-store operations, so this will be a substantial effect on him and the family, but we understand it has to be done, and we're trying to get it behind us. Any questions?
I'm just wondering how much publicity Mr. Surdyk got from this in terms of name recognition of the store. And I'm also wondering why, when the state called and told him to close, and when our staff came in on a Sunday, I believe more than once, to ask him to close, he didn't just close at that point, but essentially said, too bad, I'm staying open. I'm also interested why he put his employees at risk of violating the law.
Your Honor, I guess the only answer, Your Honor, excuse me.
You can call me Lisa, it's okay.
Chairman Goodman, I guess the only thing I can tell you is in the heat of the moment, he made a horrible decision. You can't justify what he did. He's not trying to justify it to me. He screwed up. After 40 years, he had a big screw up, and he understands that. I will tell you from a publicity standpoint, we also provide this information to the city. Because it was immediately announced that there would be a 30-day closing, the sales for the next 30 to 45 days were about 25% less than the previous year. And they constantly had people calling to ask if they were open. So I actually think from a publicity standpoint, he suffered right after the fact, because I provided the sales information to the city, and it shows that I don't think it helped him. I think it actually hurt him in the short run there as far as the sales go. So
well, that'd be an interesting way of spinning it. that he did this thing, he got tons of publicity, and then poor Jim Surdyk, he then was punished because people felt bad for him. I don't believe it.
Well, you know what? I'm not saying he was punished. I'm just saying the fact is that the sales were down right after it happened. You asked how the publicity, what it did, and I think it hurt him in the beginning. So, nobody is going to sit here and try to justify what happened. I just can't do that, nor will he. But I also think that the punishment for someone who's never had a violation in many, many, many years and who is a good business in this community, he's trying to take the lumps as to what happened and do the right thing. That's why I'd ask that you consider okaying the resolution that we did, and we would pay it right away, we would abide by it, and we'd hopefully never be in front of you again as we haven't for the last 40 years.
Thank you. Members of the committee. Anyone have any comment? If you don't, you don't, but I'm just asking. Okay. I don't believe the punishment fits the crime. I guess no one else will speak, so I will. So I'm going to move to reject the agreement. I don't want to be negotiating with you. That's not my job. But I am going to ask you to go back and talk to staff about what punishment potentially could fit this crime. And we'll ask to see some sort of either agreement, or we'll have a hearing on it. We'll ask members of the public to come too, if we have to have an actual hearing on it, because I've heard a lot from members of the public. But hopefully you can come to a resolution short of that, and I'll give you 2 cycles, Mr. Wilson, to do that. And until then, nothing will happen. So you won't be asked to be closed until we can get this resolved.
That's fine.
Mr. Fussy, Mr. Wilson, does that follow our protocol? I do not think it's my job to be negotiating. I'm not a Your Honor. I'm just chairing the meeting. So I don't want to, I would rather leave that to our professional staff. And we can consult with them if they have opinion, if they would like to know our opinions.
Madam Chair and committee members, if that's the will of the committee, I think that would be appropriate. What is before you today is, you're correct, only the question of whether to approve the recommended settlement or not. Ultimately, if it is the will of the committee to reject it, it is also wholly within the committee's power to decide upon what they think the appropriate, what you think the appropriate penalties or sanctions are for the licensee's admitted violations. And that could either take the form of, if we were to readdress it with the licensee, perhaps staff could work out a restructured penalty, and if not, certainly the due process rights that are held by the licensee would allow for a full and formal quasi-judicial licensing hearing to take place before this committee. It sounds like a couple cycles out, in which the licensee would be able to present whatever argument or documentation or exhibits that they might have regarding how they might view the appropriate sanction, and certainly staff or the city could present information regarding what an appropriate sanction might be. And ultimately, according to Minnesota law, the city council would have the ability to decide upon and impose what they think the appropriate penalty would be.
Councilmember Frye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say to staff, or at least provide a little bit of input, that I do appreciate the move away from the continuous 30-day suspension, in that it impacts the far more than just ownership. It impacts the employees. If they aren't able to work for an entire month, it does become difficult to pay rent. And additionally, it probably becomes difficult to continue to work at that specific business. So I far prefer the Sunday approach.
Further comments, directions to staff? I think, to be fair, the basis for my concern comes in with the point that we asked Mr. Surdick not to be open. We went down and asked him not to open. The state called him and asked him not to be open, and he basically said, too bad. I'm not going to do it. And I was home. I watched it on TV. You got a lot of publicity out of it. And said, well, my dad did this when Prohibition ended, so I feel I could do this. And I just think it was really thumbing their nose at the authorities who have the responsibility for governing liquor, which is very highly regulated. And to be honest, I cannot imagine any bar downtown saying, this is the Prince anniversary, so I'm going to stay open all night and I'm going to sell liquor all night long. we'd be in there shutting them down. That would be it. The police would probably get involved in it. And so instead, the liquor industry came to us and said, we have this Prince anniversary. Can you work around this? So they can't sell liquor. They can be open all night. And we had a cooperative agreement. I think it's really important to try to cooperate with on sale and off sale organizations. And I think the punishment has to fit the crime. I don't think this one did. If he had shut down right after they came in and asked him to do so, I might have felt differently. So just to be fair, that's where I'm coming from. I'm not sure anyone else wants to comment on where they're coming from, but I do think it's possible to negotiate something different than this. Any further comments or questions? So the motion in front of us is to deny the adopted business license settlement agreement negotiated between the city and Surdix, asking the licensee and staff to discuss this yet again and come back with a potential solution in 2 cycles, which is a month. And until that time, Mr. Surdick will operate as normal without any issues or problems, since they're never.
We won't be open on Sundays, I promise.
That'd be good. Thank you for stating that. That was probably a good thing for you to do. Further comments and questions? All in favor of the chair's recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here, Mr. Surdick.
Thank you.
We'll then move on to our remaining item, which is item number 24. Shalonda, welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Shalonda Holmes, and I'm a Senior Project Coordinator in Residential Finance. I'm before you today to ask the committee to authorize submission of priority rank grant applications to the Metropolitan Council Livable Communities account for LCDA and TOD grant programs. Every year, the City Council considers the submission of LCDA and TOD pre-applications to the Metropolitan Council. This year, we received another record total of 16 applications, which is more than double from what we usually see. Nonetheless, the Metropolitan Council also only accepts 6 applications per city, which are 3 applications per program. The ranking committee for the program was made up of a team of staff members from appropriate CPED divisions, and we also received comments from transportation staff of the TOD recommended projects. This year, based on the Metropolitan Council evaluation criteria, the 6 projects listed in the description to be recommended for pre-application submission. The full application process for the LCDA and TOD program is very competitive, and projects do have to compete with other projects within the region. The applications before you are the highest ranked projects based on the Met Council evaluation criteria. And I'm open to any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions for staff on item number 24? Seeing none, I'm going to amend your recommendation. I will move approval of the staff recommendation with the following rankings. In item number 1, the LEAF project would be item number 1, West Broadway Curve item number 2, and Olson Townhomes item number 3. And with regard to the second section, I would note the Mino Bimaziduan project should be number 1. 38th Street Station should be number 2, and Penn Avenue Union number 3. Are there questions or comments with regard to my recommendation? These are all the top 3. It's just simply changing around the order of the top 3
Yes.
Based on feedback from various committee members. Further comments or questions on the chair's recommendation to have the rankings listed as described by myself? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is approved. Thank you for your report. Seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you.